All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for introducing us. Good to see that the hall's beginning to fill up. Always good to perform in front of an audience that is not entirely empty, so that's nice. So I noticed that the previous panel had blazers and we don't, so let's see how that goes. But thank you so much for all being here. The topic is obviously greatly interesting to all of us, Make in India. Those of you who remember the Make in India story, it was initially launched in 2014, towards the end of 14. It's now counting 10 years almost to its completion in terms of a journey. Just to remind us all, the background of Make in India was to basically make India a manufacturing world power. And especially if you remember it, there were three goals set in those days for Make in India. The first goal was that can India have 25% of its GDP coming out of manufacturing, which means that manufacturing plays a big role in our economy. That was goal one. Goal two was to create 100 million jobs out of manufacturing. And the goal three was to make the manufacturing sector a high growth sector, which means that can it grow between 12 to 15% a year, which means can it double every 5 to 6 years. All of you here are math wizards for venture capital, so you know this math. Now, if you look back in the track record of this, results have been, I would say, very mixed. I think the 25% of GDP has, I think, stuck at 16, 17%, which is not great and not terrible. It's reasonable, I would say. The second goal has been a complete washout, right? 100 million jobs in manufacturing, I think the numbers are well below 10 million. So that really hasn't worked. The third one, about 12 to 15% annualized growth, CAGR over 10 years, I think we're at 6 to 7%. So that's also not really hot. So all in all, it's clearly a mixed bag. It's certainly not an unqualified success. It is not a disaster either. So we are sitting in that middle of that 10, 11 year scorecard looking back situation. So I just want to set that context of Make in India. With that being the case, let's get started. We have, as you know, some very eminent investors here with great funds. And what I really like about this panel, and I suppose it's by design, but could also be otherwise, is that the sectors they represent are so different and so unique. I mean, Tessa has got space tech and defense tech to talk about, extremely hot sector, and currently, in the eye of the storm, so to speak. We've got Ashwani, who's representing a relatively younger firm, and I think their focus, and I'm sure he'll tell us more, is manufacturing, climate, and perhaps even financial infra and deep tech and so forth. But I'm assuming that climate and manufacturing is big. And of course, we have Sanchayan representing Avishkar, one of India's most, storied impact investment firms. And I think the work in financial inclusion, agri, etc., microfinance, I'm sure all of you know it's legendary work. So congratulations to all of you for doing some great stuff. With that being the case, let's kick it off. So Tessa, why don't we start with you, right? Space tech, defense tech. Tell us what is, in your view from the Make in India perspective, what is going right and what is going well for your sectors?
First of all, good morning, everyone. Thanks for making the time on a Saturday morning. And thanks, Shantanu, for the question. I think at the very top, right, if you think about where India was, and I'll speak about it more from an early stage venture capital investor point of view in space and defense. A decade ago, we were importing drones, we were renting satellite capacity, and defense manufacturing largely meant subcomponent manufacturing and export. Today, just to contextualize sort of where we are, our exports in the last decade alone has increased 34 times. We have over 300 private sector space tech companies. And ISRO is partnering with some of the best deep tech minds in the country and not the only player in the room. And that's just not incremental, right? I think that's truly identity shifting as a nation. And you'll see that, I think Shantanu sort of alluded to it at the top, you'll also see that reflect in public market sentiments as well. Today, you're seeing a defense company trade at multiples that were only known to SaaS companies. So you're actually seeing a lot of momentum in the sector. I think the first venture capital money in space tech went in to this company called Bellatrix less than a decade ago. So that's how much headway we've made in the space. So now I think two things have really meaningfully helped move that needle, if I may. I think one policy has been truly at the heart of this, right? Be it your PLI, be it the defense procurement reserves reforms that's come in, or the defense corridor build out, the private space policy, all of that has unlocked, I think, a private sector market that just did not exist before. And you're also seeing capital follow some of this, right? And that obviously has also lead to some of the best talent. And that's, I think, been at the center of this. That you're seeing folks from an ISRO, from a DRDO, from the officers at the forces today coming and becoming startup founders and not just coming out and writing a memoir. That's actually been sort of what is defining. In our portfolio, we have a company called CICIR Radar. The founder is Tapan Mishra, was a chief scientist at ISRO and was in the business for 40 years before he started up now. So I think we've made a meaningful headway, I want to say, at least in these sectors in the last 10 years. And I'm sure Ashwini and Sanjay both will sort of echo those sounds. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is a very interesting example. We'll come back to this later if we get time, which is that how is it that this is the one sector where talent is coming out of the public sector into starting companies? You don't see that very often. Historically in India, entrepreneurs come from private sector, large employers, multinationals. They don't come from government sector. But this is a very interesting point. The other interesting point, of course, is just 10 years since the first venture investment, and here we are talking about a very sort of really strong, large, high potential market. So yeah, we'll come back to that. So Ashwini, turning to you, I know there is common interest in terms of what you are doing as a fund, but in your view in climate manufacturing or any of the areas you're focused on, maybe you can tell us what is your primary thesis, and within that, what is Make in India doing that is working well?
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot for this opportunity. We at Capital A, we would like to invest in advanced manufacturing, climate, sustainable, deep tech kind of companies. The reason for that is, if you go 30 years back, most of us here would have been working in HAL, BHEL, ISRO, so on and so forth. But something like software services, software industry has taken us or given us a great opportunity where a lot of engineers definitely went into that and got a name for India. And we feel that this is the time where production, manufacturing, deep tech is the new wave which is going to ride for the next 15 to 20 years and take shape. That's the reason we believe in this industry. And clearly the macroeconomics, the world politics, the DLIs, the PLIs, what governments are giving is really helping this sector. And the most important thing, when you want to grow, you need to measure, you need to improve, and you need to work on it. And digitalization is playing a big role in that. So with all the advancements, collecting of data, high quality people getting into this industry because there is a bright future, we feel that advanced manufacturing, production, China plus one story is playing up big time. That's the main area. And we invest early stage companies in semiconductor, space, defense, manufacturing industry, 4.0, 5.0, anything to do with the horizontal as a manufacturing is what interests us. That's the take, Shantanu.
Okay, great. I think in a subsequent round, we can talk about specific companies that might be of illustrative. People get examples out of that. But thank you for this. So coming to you, Sanchan, different sector altogether compared to the first two speakers here. What is your take? What is the connection between an Avishkar thesis and Make in India? Let's start there, and then you can tell us how to connect the dots.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Shantanu. Yeah, so maybe just a quick brief on Avishkar. So we've been around 20 years. We are impact investors. What that really means is we invest in businesses which has a positive impact on the lives of the poor people and or the climate, right? So how it connects, Shantanu. So we've been actually, we talk about investing in Bharat. We've been investors in Bharat from the get-go. That was the whole thesis, that we will invest in, places where a lot of people are not investing in. We didn't do any sort of originally tech investing. We do a lot of that now because it has a linkage to impact. So we do a lot of, investing in the SME sector, which is a core to, to what Make in India is also trying to achieve. We invest a lot in financing. A lot of that financing goes to fuel some of these manufacturing, that Make in India is trying to achieve. And then, basic stuff like agriculture, food processing, and so on. All of that forms part of Make in India in some way or the other, right? So, I guess maybe what I can talk about is maybe, some indirect references to how some elements of Make in India has worked, right? So if you step back a bit and say, what is fueling that? What is fueling some of this growth that we are seeing across sectors? Also availability of capital. So what we invest a lot in financial services, right? And financial services on the SME sector, financial services on microfinance. Microfinance, incidentally, is meant for productive manufacturing use and other sort of productive uses, right? So if you look at just these sectors, so microfinance sector has grown by about 10x in the last 10 years, from 50,000 crore to about 5 lakh crores today. If you take the SME financing sector, and not all SMEs obviously are manufacturing, so it's a mix of everything. But if you look at SME financing sector, that's grown by about 8 times in the last 10 years, right? So talks to the growth. Obviously, we've seen Indian economy grow and financing, sort of lending supports that growth. Specifically on manufacturing, we actually lend to companies which are lending to manufacturers. We have a company called Electronica Finance. They have grown about 8 times. They're growing at about 25 to 30% every year now. So they actually lend to small and medium-sized enterprises who set up small manufacturing units like lead machines and so on and so forth. That feeds into the larger sort of manufacturing. Very important base, by the way, from a Make in India perspective, right? If you just take the SMEs themselves and their job creation, we talked about employment. India today has about 72, 73 million SMEs. This is about a 10 million addition from 10 years back. On an average, an SME employs about 6 to 7 people. So that's actually 60 million jobs created in the SME sector, right? Now, not all of that is manufacturing clearly, but some of that is. So, when we say, look, out of 100 million that we wanted to create employment for, we only got 10 million. I don't know if some of this is getting counted, right? We really don't know that, right? So those are some of the indicators. Then I think there are sectors like, agro processing where there's been a significant growth. There are challenges to that as well, but clearly there's significant growth. One element of the Make in India campaign is actually, or the sort of what the government drive wanted to do is actually startups themselves. So we talked about some growth in the startups, but if you just look at some stats, about 7-8 years back, registered startups in India under DPIT was about 7 or 8,000. Today, just take a guess how many we have. We have about 1.7, 1.6 lakhs. Right? So that obviously is fueling a lot of the sort of manufacturing growth. Some of that is fueling a lot of the manufacturing growth. We expect a lot more will happen. We're starting to see some sort of green shoots of that now over the last few years. But that has all sort of happened over the last 10 years. Right?
Yeah, I think I got the mic to work. Yes. So I think you gave a good example of Electronica Finance. Is that what you said? Okay. So using that as a metaphor, maybe I can go back to Tessa and then to Ashwini one more round on pick a company in your portfolio or of interest to you that you think is a very good representation of what Make in India is about. And use that as an example to help the audience. And we will go into the next stage later after that round. So maybe anything that comes to mind that you are proud of? Law of fixed number of working microphones.
Battery. No, maybe I'll continue on with the example of CISA Radar, for example, right? And that fits nicely with the sort of businesses that we also like as investors. So like I mentioned, we spoke a little bit about the founder background. He was a chief scientist at ISRO, led all remote sensing missions for ISRO while he was there. Now is building in what is called Earth observation. So today that technology exists, but they're all optical technology businesses. CISR is using a radar-based technology. And there are 3 other companies literally in the world that have similar technology, not the exact same, but similar technology. And I think about 75% of all of their components, subcomponents are manufactured in India today. And it's obviously an early stage deal, it's a Series A deal, so still early in that journey. But the product has already been tested for 500, 600 hours now on a drone. They're also building their sort of buses as well as their satellite payload will go into space early next year. I think in all honesty, private space launches have become more of a conversation at coffee tables than SaaS investments, right? So I think we're in a little bit of a different ecosystem. But having said that, all of the space founders that I spoke about, there's a WhatsApp group with 800 people, and that's the ecosystem. There's obviously a very, very long way to go from here, but that's to sort of give you some context. And Hyderabad sits nicely at the center of it.
No, that's why I asked you for the example. Just a quick question for clarification. How much of this technology that this company is developing is hardware and how much is software? Is it, just give a ballpark?
So when any of these companies start largely, there's like anywhere from, I want to say, 3 to 8 to 10 years of hardware built out that's required. This company has been around for 4 years. That's when we invested in the company. So your first check might be a little bit later than if you were building a dating app. But, I mean, if you are wanting, and dating apps will give you quick feedback on whether your platform is working or not. But if you want to be part of nation building, I think it's important to build in some of these sectors.
Fair enough. So, Ashwini, any examples from you that really represents Make in India spirit in the startup world?
Absolutely. As we are an early stage investors, we come in, some of the companies, we come in at idea, right? I have a company called Lumas. They make nano factories. So whenever you build a product or a consumer product, for example, you can't go to, as a startup, you can't go to a big factory where you need to put 500 kgs of raw materials to get like a ton of or 10,000 bottles, right? So these guys, Nitesh and Subhajit, they are ex-IISc MTech graduates. They came up with a nano factory where you have the ingredients placed and it's completely digitized, where you can put the proportions in and the processes, and it gives an output of a tablet or a capsule or a serum or a cream. So you can have small batch manufacturing, continuous manufacturing. Your cream and my cream need not be same because we are different, and you can do just in time. Because gone are the days where you need to have 6 months of shelf life, 12 months of shelf life. When you know when is your biryani coming to your place, whether it is across the road or not, when the logistic transparencies have increased so much, there is no need to produce large quantities of products and keep it in the shelves. So nano factories, if a country comes and says, we want to have it as made in Dubai, this factory can go and sit there, manufacture whatever is required, keep the ingredients fresh, get the output just in time and customizable. So this is a true just in time. They are doing contract manufacturing as of now, as they are building the strength of the nano factory, and the future would be like selling these nano factories across the world so that you can have 10, 20 machines making the product of the same brand in the country, reducing the logistics cost. So that is one example. The other example I have is 3 PhDs from IIT Madras. They made a formulation on a phase change material where a Tata Ace container or a truck can be transformed into multi-thermal zones. You can have fish, which is minus 40 degrees, minus 23 degrees. You can have dairy +4 and vegetables +9, and so on and so forth. It is no more cold shock, no more using of dry ice. Completely mid-mile, last mile is taken care by them. We invested in them when they were doing 20 lakhs a month. Now they do 6-7 crores a month. And they can go into thermal solutions for data centers. They can go into HVACs and so on and so forth. So there are multiple examples like this. I mean, for us, startups are like our babies. There is no favorite, but I had to give some data, deep tech examples.
Very nice. I mean, fascinating, both examples. But the first one, just pardon my ignorance, but I'm thinking that nano manufacturing or nano factories, is it additive manufacturing, 3D printing, or is it traditional subtractive?
It is traditional. So it is traditional manufacturing machine. Today, Shantanu, if you go and ask for a 10-head, 14-head packaging machine, it will cost 50 lakhs. A Bosch machine, roughly, don't quote me on this, but roughly 30 to 40 lakhs, right? But this entire machine, which makes you a serum bottle at the end, costs around 1-2 crores. And it is so simple and small. It is like a big photocopying machine. Because it is small and clean, your certifications are also very easy. So,
got it. So the business model is what? Manufacturing as a service?
to start with, till you
Okay.
build the expertise on the machine.
Got it.
And then you can deploy this and completely manage the manufacturing also, or you can do asset sales as well. You can sell the machine off, like how you sell a packaging machine.
No, I think this is a fantastic example. So thank you for sharing that. Great. So let's just switch gears. I know time is not infinite, so we'll switch gears a little bit. Clearly, there is enough here to say that, excitement. I mean, really, there is so much innovation happening in manufacturing, clearly. However, if you go back to the original points I was making about why Make in India has been struggling, I'd like to switch gears now and ask you the same question on a flip side, that why do you think Making in India has struggled as much as it has? Why are we not at 25% of GDP for manufacturing? Why are we not producing 100 million jobs? And why are we not growing at a rate that would allow us this sector to double every 5 years? Maybe I'll start with you again, Ashwani. Yeah.
See, I'll give a different view, right? Why did VCs invest in tech before than manufacturing? The reason is very simple, right? You have an app which is working. Before I finish this sentence, it can be deployed in Kashmir, it can be deployed in Kanyakumari. So the rate at which a tech can be deployed in technology is light speed, the speed of electrons, right? Or more than that. But in manufacturing, when you do a product, it has to go from GD Metla to Habsiguda maybe first, and then Bangalore, then Kanyakumari, and so on and so forth. So there is a inherent, in a physical world, inherent delays at which it progresses, right? It takes time. In software, if something goes wrong, you can have 10 people overnight burn the midnight oil and fix it. But in manufacturing, if you go and buy a wrong steel, you are done. You cannot sell it, your money is gone, and you may even need to shut the company, right? So manufacturing is very tricky. Software cycles go as VC with multipliers. But manufacturing and product and IP, if you get it right, it will be a couple of times VC. After that, it is debt, strategic / VC kind of thing, right? It's a different view. The main reason for the delay in growth could be the nature of the business, because it takes time. You can't build a factory in one day. You can't run a manufacturing unit from garage. It can start from there, but from there to the factory, it takes time. So that's one of the biggest reasons. The other, on the employment side of it, things have changed. To run a very huge factory, unfortunately or fortunately, you don't need a lot of people, because digitalization has come into picture. If you remember, 10 years back, for a check to pass, 3 people had to sign, right? I mean, literally. But now you have maker checker, you have authorizations, and so on and so forth. So banking digitization has taken over. Factory automations have taken over. Real dark factories have come. When I say real dark factories, there is no light in the factory. It's completely run by robots. So these are the 2 factors where employment numbers will not see so much, even if it becomes very big gigafactories. And gigafactories take time to build.
Very nice. So you give 2 good answers. One is that for the first count of 25% market share, just wait. 10 years is not enough to expect to see that kind of result. So maybe the goal was not properly timed. So maybe another 10 years, 15 years. And the second one is like, there is no hope. There is not going to happen.
Yeah, and one more important thing is that if it is easy for us to build, it is easy for others also to build, because we may be smart, but others are also smart, right? So what took China 40 years to really do that, it will take time. And there is enough tailwinds, fortunately, for us now.
Understood. Sanchan, what are your thoughts? I mean, from your perspective, I mean, you talked about SME sector. SME sector is supposedly the long tail of manufacturing. It carries a lot of weight, but in some sense, it's also a very large number of players offering small amounts of GDP add-on, let's say, right? So from your perspective, what is the real reason Make in India has not gotten us to where we should have been by now?
Yeah, so, SMEs is the long tail. It's actually a very large contributor to the GDP. I think about 30% of the GDP comes from the SMEs. So pretty significant, and one of the largest employers, of course. So, I was just thinking about some stuff that Ashwani said, very important. But if you take a large scale factory, it's one thing to have a self-contained factory, the other thing to have that factory being fed by a number of other sort of component manufacturer, which all sort of comes from the SMEs, right? firstly, I won't necessarily say it's failed, it's grown slower. I mean, if you just look at absolute
I don't think you're
numbers,
saying
as I
it's
just
failing. I
said,
think you're saying it's stumbling.
correct. It's stumbled, and could it have been faster in some sense? So one thing that we see, so I guess I'll talk about it from two perspectives, right? One, for the SMEs themselves to grow, I think there are two challenges that we see. One is the access to credit. There is a lot of credit going to SMEs, but they still, I talked about the fact that there's been 8x growth in SME credit, but there is still about a 90. I think I remember my numbers right, about 90 lakh crore shortfall in SME financing today, right? So that still hasn't opened up. So which is required for some of that growth to happen. I think from an employment perspective, we need to do better at skilling and better at having labor markets work better. I mean, probably that a lot better than I do. But we see it on the grey collar, blue collar segment. There's, on the one hand, there's significant churn happening at the SME levels. On the other hand, there are lots of people who say we aren't employed, right? So some of that is a skill gap. A lot of that, I think, is actually skill gap. So we need to do a lot better, I think, on the skilling aspect of it, and have labor markets work more efficiently, just from an employment perspective, I would say.
So the credit part of it is absolutely well understood, because I think if you talk to NBFCs today in this country, and there's so many of them really coming up, and they're so interesting, so many of them. So, and MSME credit, SME credit is certainly one of the big areas that people are trying to innovate. There is a lot of gap, like you mentioned. So I think in some sense, people in the audience should start to pick up cues in the ecosystem where the gaps are, from what you guys are saying, that credit for small manufacturing is really one of the big bottlenecks to unleash this long tail. So maybe we can grow faster if those things were available in the ecosystem. But I think this point about skilling, I mean, both of you made somewhat contradictory statements, which is good. I mean, he's saying that it's not going to happen, and because automation is always going to run faster than human skilling. The joke is that the world doesn't wait for people to get skilled. The world finds automation to bypass the skilling problem, right? So that's what's happening. Smart factories, I think you were referring to smart factories. So in that sense, I think the second part of it is trickier. And for a fund like yours, where livelihood, I'm sure, is one of the theses, manufacturing as a livelihood, I don't know if that's even going to be on the table for long. But I don't know. I'm challenging you. Please contradict me. Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, buy the story that we're only going to have dark factories. Again, I don't have the stats, and I don't know how. If you look at, so if you just compare where China is today, where India is, obviously there's a significant gap. They are like some 27-28% of manufacturing in the world. We are like some 3-4% or something, right? But even somebody as large as that, yes, they have these large gigafactories, but I understand a lot of that is still fed by the SME vendor system, which does need to exist. So not all products can just be made in a dark factory with just robots working. Maybe they will come a time. It's like, we've been talking about AI, and there's a thought that, AI will make everybody redundant, and there'll just be a few people, who will program how AI works, and everybody else will need to be given a role. Now, if you go to that level,
universal basic income.
Yeah. So it's like basic, if you get to that level, then you will have robots running all your factories.
No, point taken. It's not going to happen like that. You're right. So, I always say that you won't lose your job to a machine. You lose your job to a person who knows how to use a machine better than you. Right?
And one more thing, Shantanu, what happens here is, you are, with all these examples, there are a lot of investment going in because of transparencies, and lot more inclusion would happen, right? Thereby the numbers would increase. You can't expect a factory and to employ 1 lakh. Like even if you take the semiconductor fab, it may be $1 trillion investment. There will be 150 people working there.
I was going to say 50, but you're being generous. Yeah. 50 acres requires 50 people now, I think, of land, yeah. So Tessa has been waiting patiently for us to, stop doing this back and forth. So Tessa, what are your thoughts as to, I guess you're in what I consider to be like a rocket ship, literally, sector, both financially speaking, people think rocket ship investments, but you are investing in rockets. So double entendre. But having said that, in your case, do you think Make in India has been an unqualified success? There is no problem at all?
Absolutely not, right? I think nothing in the world is without problems. But just talking about, and obviously defense has been a fairly, like you mentioned, fast-growing segment, but no growth comes without some teenage acne. So I think there's some of those, right? Like procurement cycles can sometimes feel like a submarine in reverse, or your testing infrastructure access can be similar to your Coldplay, buying a Coldplay ticket. So some of those things exist. And export compliance process, especially if you're a dual use company, it's very a tricky sort of business to be in. But I think that's one part of the problem statement. But just to speak a little bit about the capital allocators like ourselves, I think we need resilient domestic capital to invest in sectors like space and defense. We need capital that will stay in the country even if US interest rate changes. That's the capital that's needed because, like we spoke about earlier, deep tech hardware takes time to build. So you need domestic capital that supports that across VE, private sector or public, really. And you also need investors that will not ask a Series A missile guidance chip manufacturing founder why it's a SaaS pivot, right? So you also need investors that understand the technology, understand the business. And I think that's sort of where I land with this one.
All right, wonderful. So we've got 10 minutes left. Let's make it interesting because the audience of TiE is always an audience of past, present, and future entrepreneurs, right? So with that in mind, imagine we were having this panel 10 years from today, yeah? And we were looking back in these 10 years, intervening between now and then. And now you take into account geopolitics. We know what's happening in the world. Moving to a multipolar world, the US is sort of, abdicating some of its sort of senior status and allowing China to come in. China is asserting. So all that being the case, in that multipolar world, a lot of geopolitical stuff will shift. We know that. In the technology world, things are shifting. So far we've successfully managed to run 40 minutes without talking about AI. So for that, I compliment all of you. But having said that, AI is a real major, the disruptor of our lifetime, right? So in that sense. So you take geopolitics, you take AI, you take deep tech, broadly speaking, and then you say, what entrepreneurs would emerge in this 10 years that we would be talking about 10 years from now? And the reason for talking about that is that give people an idea of what is worth building, in other words, right? So Tessa, why don't you start with you?
I think honestly today, if you're in the audience, you're a deep tech founder building, welcome. We've been saving a seat for you. This truly is, I think, been in like the best decade in India's history to be building in these spaces. So today, almost, I want to say all of the deep tech startups that I speak to, like we spoke about Sisir, is a combination of both hardware and software both. And a lot of the software is enabled by AI, which is generative in nature, right? And its intelligence. So that's, I think, the zip code that even all deep tech founders are sort of building in. But I do want to make sure that I'm like, especially in the sectors that I spend time on, to just give you some thematic areas that I'm most excited about. Things like secure communications, propulsion tech systems, testing infrastructure. All of those are fairly interesting areas to be building in. And then general autonomy as a broader theme is, we can debate whether that will get built in India or in the US, but if the capital market can match the talent that already exists in this country, I think those are all interesting areas to build in. But I do want to leave the conversation with just, for any entrepreneur that's starting out, 3 broad starting points. If you're an early stage founder, start with a dual use application. It protects you against revenue cycles that is in the nature of this business. Build for ruggedization. So if you can have a product that works in the heat of Rajasthan or the cold in Siachen, global buyers will follow. Build relationships early in this sector. In defense specifically, relationships compound a lot faster than revenue could. So those may be like parting thoughts.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Ashwini.
I'll give a couple of examples before I come to what's the future entrepreneur should look at. If you take SaaS 10 years back, it took time because you are pretty much building end-to-end modules in that solution. But today, if you want to build SaaS, you can pick authentication module, you can pick encryption module, you can pick payment gateway module, you can do, and just do the core business, right? So the time to market for SaaS was much longer last time, previously to build, but now a lot less. So you need to be a lot more quicker. So what learning, at least I see and I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself when I was building, is that if you can't do anything in 2 years, then you are too late, right? Because the competition is catching up, because they can build faster and cheaper. The other one is build for something which is going to be there in 5 years, not today. Because then you have the early mover advantage, then you can do little bit of pivots and so on and so forth. And especially for Indian context, with amount of monies, PSUs have been allocated directly, indirectly by government, the grants and the debts. Always look at what you can get as a grant, debt, or any shape or form from the government as well, because there is enough money sitting there. Obviously, the transparency has to increase and reach has to increase, but that is something which you should definitely avail. Otherwise, you are not doing justice to your startup. So these are the one. Time to build, keep a watch on it. What you're building, whether it is future-proof or futuristic, keep a watch on it. Third, are you getting the finances, low-hanging finances available? Are you grabbing them or not? Keep a watch on it. These are the three.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think I'll just abstract out a little bit and say, look, if you look at the last, we talked about all these startups that happened over the last 10 odd years. A lot of the excitement has actually been around India as being a market for products and services, right? Yes, we build, B2B products which sell offshore. We build software which sells offshore. But a large amount of excitement has really been building products which can be sold to the large Indian market, the middle class, and now the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and so on and so forth. We as investors, and granted, we are not sort of really deep tech investors. We were not deep tech investors about 10 years back, but we were looking for people who would do more stuff in manufacturing, and it was difficult to find those people. I think we find a lot more of those people now, right? So if I had to look 10 years out, I would say, look, we will find a lot of people who are really building at two levels. Obviously, there's AI and all of that, which is in the software realm. We have always done that, and we will do that. Hopefully, we'll do that faster and better than other people in the world. But I think we'll build a lot of stuff more with atoms. People really building, real deep tech, physical stuff. So even in the AI domain, we are talking about, going from a generative AI to an agentic AI to a physical AI, where you really have robots working, right? So we see a lot more people coming up in that. Space and defense tech is part of that, but I think we will see a lot more of that. So we'd love to obviously see that, but there are green shoots today. We need to do a lot more. Among the VC circles, the conversation is, yes, there's a good, exciting pipeline, but, like she said, when I'm Series A and B, very difficult to find still people who have scaled up yet. It's going to take time. But hopefully in a 10 years time frame, we'll have a lot more people who are really building stuff.
Nice. So, all of you said very interesting things, and I felt like I should ask this question that, we talk about skilling. Do we find people skilled in our sector to build a company? That's a common question that people ask of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs ask of others. But you guys are investing in entrepreneurs, right? Not investing in companies themselves or sectors through the entrepreneurs. With your lens, what skill, if you have to pick one skill that you're looking for in an entrepreneur you want to back, what is that thing? If you feel like you're not ready yet, that's fine. But whoever thinks you have a ready answer to say that, look, if I get this skill, I'm already interested in this entrepreneur. Yeah? This should technically be a rapid fire question, but I'm giving you time. Yeah.
I think one time a founder told me that, Tessa, you don't need to believe my idea. You just need to believe that I won't quit on it. And I think that's exactly what we look for with founders, right? That don't quit on their idea, that pivot till they find fitment, and they will all pivot. And
so conviction
and a little bit of resilience is there. And especially if you're building in a market like India, it does take a lot of resilience to build here. And you want to back founders that are just that.
That have high conviction and high resilience. Good. Thank you.
No, it's a 360-degree question. I'll just give one angle to it. Everything is important. Personally speaking, I don't invest in any company where I don't want to quit my job and join their team, right? So it has to be that way. Where it comes to skills, people who are doing engineering for 4 years, MTech is much more serious. Skilling at semester 1, semester 2 is very important, right? Especially with the amount of hours and grind they go through in the 11th and 12th class, once they come to engineering, industry adaptation is very important. Otherwise, the 4 years are kind of lost, or not enough justice is done. Apart from the marks, studies and all, fundamentals is fine. But I think skilling should start at the age of 16, and at a scale where India is, if that happens, miracles can be done.
I guess my question was, what skill are you looking for an entrepreneur you want to back?
I mean, learning, adaptability.
Okay, adaptability. All right. Sanchan. Yeah.
Perseverance. I think maybe restating the same thing as she said. Perseverance without a doubt. I think, we've been around 20 years. We've seen companies go through all sorts of cycles. The people who come out winners at the other end, if they've got everything else, of course, are the people who persevere and people who give up.
Beautiful. Our time is up. This reminds me of a sort of a very famous entrepreneur who I shall not name, was giving a talk in the city of Hyderabad in ISB, well before your time. And somebody asked him, like, so what is that skill in an entrepreneur that you will always back? And he says, look, in the history of entrepreneurship, only one set of guys make money. These are the guys who never give up. Everybody else loses money, right? So I think that's what you guys are saying, right? So with that, thank you so much. I'm sure we could have gone on for another hour given the nature of this conversation, but we are done. And thank you so much for being such a wonderful, insightful panelist and wonderful audience listening to us. So thank you so much.